Hey Sandra. Okay, so this is going to be my anti-obesity speech, and here we go. Is it permissible for the Child or Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to run this ad campaign, or for anyone to run this ad campaign for that matter? I'll begin timing now. Okay, I will begin. It is the UCSC Ethics Bowl team's opinion that the ad campaign, in particular led by the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, um, in regards to the anti-obesity, is not ethically permissible. Now, it must first be said that the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, people responsible, entirely responsible for this anti-obesity advertisement campaign, is very openly admitting to inflicting harm in the form of emotional distress, better known as shame. They're very open about this shaming tactic, and I feel that this is undeniably a harm or loss of utility. And anytime that we see an act of loss of utility, we have to, in order to ethically permit this or see this as ethically permissible, we have to show that not only does this produce a greater good than the loss of good, however, it has to also be necessary to produce this greater good, as in there is no other way to produce this good that it is striving for without this loss of utility. And now we also have to look at other options and see how viable they are, if at all, to determine whether or not this specific tactic for reduction of obesity is the only option, making it necessary. Now, in a recent study, Mark Hamer, basically this researcher looked into metabolic health and realized that fat percentage in the human body ultimately has no direct causation to future risk of heart disease. Perhaps the greatest negative utility that we find from obesity is loss of life in some sort of sense, and really the only way we find that is through heart disease. However, people in good metabolic health um, are in equal risk of acquiring future heart disease as anyone else in that same shape or in the same metabolic health. Now, metabolic health has absolutely nothing to do with height weight proportionality. Someone who fits perfectly in our society standards of height weight proportionality can actually be at much greater risk of future heart disease than someone who's obese but in better metabolic health. So really, this is not about saving lives anymore. So what utility is gained from reducing obesity rates? Well, what about diabetes type 2? Surely this is caused by obesity. This is an obesity caused illness. But to say that we have to shame these individuals to refrain from a lifestyle that acquires that type 2 diabetes ensues is really not, it doesn't hold. And basically to illustrate why it doesn't hold, I like to use my real gun and stun gun analogy. Perhaps there is one individual who's about to kill a room, like basically about to kill 100 people in the push of a button. And now I'm standing behind him, and I have a real gun in my hand, and I have a stun gun in my hand. Both of my options, stun gun and real gun, will result in what I want. The fact that this person, this potential murderer, will be detained, and that 100 lives will be saved. The real gun creates the loss of utility of the loss of this potential murderer's life. The stun gun doesn't kill anyone, no life is lost. Basically, my real gun is shame, and my stun gun is positive mental encouragement. Okay, so not only is shame not our only option, but shame in itself is just bad. It is creating a disservice to everyone across the BMI chart. Ads make unhealthy people, but height weight proportionally people, content in their health. For example, someone who's clogged arteries but a thin stomach is going to see these ads and saying, hey, I'm not fat, I do not have to worry about my health because I am in the good health. Obese people need to change because obese people are the ones who are unhealthy. Height weight proportion people, by contrast, are not. Basically, what this does is by opening up the conversation to obese people only, it's opening it to the minority, and it's closing this dialogue of health to the majority of people. Now, this is so why limit the conversation of health and nutrition to a minority group? Isn't there much like why is that necessary? And especially because like we can gain so much more positive utility by opening up this conversation to everyone across the BMI chart. I feel like there would be a lot more utility to be gained from this, and I don't see why it's necessary to limit the conversation to such a small group and to do it in such a fashion that actually shames them and brings people harm. And not only is it bringing obese people harm through shame, but it's also bringing um, people who are height weight proportional and not obese harm too, for it's perpetuating fat phobia, and it hinders people's perceptions and ability to create relationships with people who are not in the same height weight proportionality or are not in the same area of the BMI chart as them. Now, in 2006 to 2010, now we're going to look into really what weight loss actually entails. Sorry, I'm just getting a read on my time. So 2006 to 2010, there was a study done. And now this took 6,000 participants all across the BMI chart. Now, in regards to just the obese people, I'm sorry, this study was done, and it was a weight loss study. Now, of the 6,000 participants, those who were obese, 90% of obese individuals failed to lose 10 pounds over this 4-year span. Now, that leaves 10% of obese individuals were successful. Of the 10% that were successful, only 10% were successful in maintaining this weight loss for more than 6 months, i.e., 1% of all obese individuals lost more than 10 pounds and were able to maintain this weight loss for a time period of greater than 6 months. 1%. Now, these are all individuals before fat discrimination, exposure to fat discrimination. So now, we take that obese people typically have a 1% chance of losing 10 or more pounds for a period of time greater than 6 months. However, when the individual is then, the obese individual is then exposed to incidences of fat discrimination, i.e. shaming themselves for their body figure. These individuals go from a 1% chance likelihood to 3 times as less likely, as in a 0.3 chance, to be successful in weight loss and maintaining of their weight loss. Now, this study is infallible. It's definitely fallible. It's definitely, nothing is infallible. So I'm not saying that this study proves that this is the case. However, it does a great job of outlining the real loss of utility when we completely ignore and neglect mental health. Mental health is absolutely comparable in the amount of utility and value as physical health, and even if you don't see it as equitable, you can absolutely see that the two are interrelated. Now, if we're going to make this marginalized minority basically go up against this fight against medical statistics, we may as well encourage them instead of put them down. I feel that there would be much more utility that comes from this, and that there is no necessity, or there's nothing innately necessary about shame. However, now, okay, I'd like to talk about a little bit about the use of the paid child actor, Chloe McSwain. Basically, her mother admitted to her lying. Chloe McSwain claimed that she had hypertension as a result of her obesity. Her mother said this is simply a complete lie. And now, this absolutely does take away the credibility of the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, but also, there's such a loss of utility from lies. We can see that they're absolutely going to take down the image of obese people at any cost. The cost of our true knowledge of the matter. So frankly, this is a campaign based on shame and lies. This campaign is not ethically permissible. What is ethically permissible is to propose a solution in which we equate mental health to physical health, in which we give physical health advice in conjunction with positive mental health encouragement. I feel that there would just be the utmost whatever utility there is to gain from reducing obesity, it will be achieved much more efficiently when we also consider mental health. Now, the counter to this might be that, hey, utilitarian, because that's supposedly I'm giving as a utilitarian calculus, is what if fat discrimination did work? And what if it were studies and everything that showed that despite it being a harm in some sense, that it actually was the best way to reduce obesity? Well, again, even if it was the best way to reduce obesity, it still wouldn't be a necessary way to reduce obesity. There would still exist other options. And now if we said that this is the only way, that fat discrimination was the only way that anyone who's obese would ever become not obese, that's great. You know what? I don't care, because that is now supposing that we live in a universe where we can't talk to parents of children, we can't have medical professionals talk to adults simply, and say that this is what you should do. We'd be living in a universe where reason doesn't uphold.